as we go live. That'll be a good startup. It's coming right into me sneezing.
Love it.
Ugh.
As loud as possible, right into the eardrums. It'll be the intro.
No, no, it can't be. Oh no,
We could make it our weekly intro.
definitely no. Let's not. Oh my
You
gosh.
don't want it to be our thing? The TCCG Sneezy podcast?
No.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
we could be the sleepy podcast.
Could be the Sleepy podcast.
That one would be okay. Maybe. I don't really remember rules about like sleeping while streaming, but I guess that's something we could look at. Oh, all right. I see us live. I think we are good. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. Welcome to episode 32 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, Dragonrider and RonMexico. How you doing? How you doing?
Hey, doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. It's feels like it has been a very long week, but it's been a good week though. So at least there's that. Uh, but I don't. At the same time, it's felt like a long week. I also don't know how we're at Friday already. I'm like, it's been long, but also it went by fast. I don't know how that works, but that's what happened.
That's that is a fascinating convergence of two different things. Oh man, this week never ended. Also, what? It's Friday already?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we should still be on like Wednesday or something. And I'm like, oh, it's already just
Oh,
about the weekend now.
that would be an evil time loop to make it to Friday and then reset to Wednesday. Oh god.
It really would. Yeah, that would be pretty terrible. So I'm glad that we're not there. But yeah, I don't know. It's just let's talk real quick about I guess what we've been up to the last week. You want to go ahead and start?
Absolutely. So, I have been jamming a bunch of games of Hearthstone, per usual. On my daily streams, it's been a kind of a roller coaster lately, with a lot of the games I've been having. I stray out of my comfort zone a few times, and things kind of fall off the wheels fall off a little bit, and then I go back into my comfort zone, and it's like, okay, things are good again, and repeat. So I haven't really gotten comfortable with a lot of other decks and classes, but my favorite ones are still doing quite well. And the expansion as a whole, I just have to say, has been extremely fun. There's lots of new cards to play with. There's lots of new strategies. Multiple different archetypes were kind of enabled, and existing ones were supported. Uh, there's only like one class that feels not good out of 11, which is pretty impressive. So I have really been enjoying the expansion and all things Hearthstone lately. So that's been fun. What about you?
Yeah, I have definitely been very, very focused on Hearthstone and especially standard Hearthstone. I got some exciting news for something coming up that I can't announce yet, but will be announced soon. So I've been very focused on that, but that has also meant like yeah, GenCon just happened last weekend, and I very much wanted to like talk about stuff and really dig into a lot of that stuff. And pretty much it was like, forget about that, put it all down, panic about what is
Yeah.
coming, and and get ready. So it's been both very exciting, but also at the same time, it's been very like intense focus and studying. I feel like I'm legit studying. I'm studying for for a school exam or something. I'm like, all right, like I'm taking notes. I'm like focused. I'm like,
Love it.
okay, if I'm not trying, I'm like watching other people or I'm listening to things, doing all sorts of stuff, and it's I don't know. It's been good because it's kind of kicked myself into, a different gear instead of just kind of going with the motions. Like I have a goal that I'm working towards, which has been very nice, but it has felt very intense. So kind of that, I guess the chaotic good energy for this week definitely has been happening a bit for me. Yeah, very, very exciting things going on. And I feel like there's definitely a lot of stuff going on. I think even in terms of like us ourselves, there's a lot of things that we're working on with Amberflight Gaming this weekend, and that you're going to mention it, but I guess, well, technically it started like last night, Thursday night, because Japan and time zones are a thing. So for us in the Western world, it was like, oh, it's like 6, 8 o'clock at night here. Oh, but we've been getting to watch at least the brackets or updates via Twitter for our fellow AFG player Nails, who's competing in the Pokemon World Championship for VGCs. Like that's been super exciting, and I don't know. So just it feels like there's a lot going on, but also at the same time, I'm like panic. Brain doesn't know what to do. I can't comprehend all these things.
A lot of things at once for
So
sure. Yeah.
yeah, but it's an exciting time still, even still, even if it feels a little bit stressful. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, and hopefully within the next few weeks or month or so, I'll kind of get to reshift and go back into a lot of checking out a lot of different card games and things that are happening. But we'll see. We also have Team Hearth League starting next week, the new season starting next week, and I'm gonna be part of a lot of different teams. So there is that slight like, oh no, am I getting myself in over my head here
No,
with
this is
how
this
many
is the
things?
season. This is the season, Don. You're lining up for that
Let's
crossover
go.
run.
That's right.
I can't wait to see it.
I'm just gonna play in like all the different things. Like, let's go. Yes. So that's where I'm at. Kind of what's been going on for us. I guess not necessarily outside of gaming, but outside of just news related things.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, mostly gaming things.
yeah,
It's been a,
exactly.
a regular week, which is good. There's not like a really significant life event or other thing going down. Just your average August, early August week. You know,
That's right. That's right. Oh, good. Finally, I feel like I need just like some
right?
average
Yeah,
weeks.
that'd be good.
Yes. All right. Well, let's go ahead and shift into our next thing here on, and that is the term of the week that you have for us. What do you got this week?
All right. So term of the week this week is mill. And mill essentially refers to um, burning your opponent's cards if it happens to be Hearthstone, or for Magic, where the term comes from pretty much is you're taking cards from your opponent and you're putting them into the graveyard. It typically means it's referring to cards from their deck. I believe it comes from the card Millstone that got printed lots of years ago, over 10 years, maybe over 15 years ago. And it essentially was just making your opponent take the top two cards of their deck and put it into their graveyard. In Hearthstone, it usually just means that you're forcing your opponent to draw more, and there's a maximum hand limit. So if they exceed that maximum hand limit with their draws, then the cards just disappear forever. They get burned up. and you can't use them. And the whole strategy just revolves around basically make them draw more and more and more, and all of a sudden they don't have any cards anymore, and then you win. In the case of Hearthstone, it's fatigue damage because you still try to draw when you don't have any more draws. In other games, it could just be that there's no resources left, so now you can do the cleanup work. But a strategy a lot of people really love. Personally, I don't love it, but I understand. Hey, it's good to have a variety of different approaches to how to win games.
Absolutely. I would say that mill type strategies are generally one of the very like love or hate style of decks or play. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how different games approach it. Because as you said, like Hearthstone has fatigue damage when you get to the end of a deck. Some games like Magic, and I think a couple other card games as well, have the, if you have no cards in your deck and you go to draw a card and you can't draw anything, then you just lose. Like it just ends the game. So, there's kind of different aspects, whether it's just, hey, I'm just going to get rid of resources from your deck, as you mentioned, with just removing those cards altogether, or completely getting to the end of the opponent's deck, whether that's fatigue damage or just ending the game straight up. So there's kind of the half measure of like just getting some cards out of the way, or the, get all the way to the end game with that. So yeah, it's definitely something that's been around and I feel like something that I think as card game players, especially like seasoned or veteran card game players, the term mill, I kind of take it for granted just because I'm like, yeah, I know what that means. But if I were new to card games, I'd be like, what does that even mean? What are we talking about? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. It's I mean, a lot of people love it because it's like a different type of way to approach winning games, and basically it's sort of like a combo deck in a different way, where you have to survive like the combo deck does, and your combo in this case isn't like a whole bunch of damage or a fancy string of things that wins the games. It's make them just draw like all of their stuff with your cards that make them draw all of their stuff as you continue to survive. Sometimes you do it all in one big burst. Sometimes it is a like over the course of the whole game thing. But for me, that's like one of the most frustrating play experiences in card games is playing against the mill deck if it's done well or correctly. Because if there's one thing I want to do in my card game, it's play my cards and have my cards and not lose all of my cards. And Mill is like, yeah, take that away from you.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Very much so. All right. Anything else that you want to mention for Mill?
Nope.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I love our terms of the week. I feel like even as somebody who's played a lot of card games, like I always get like just a slight, either reminder or just a little new piece of strategy when we go over these. I love it.
Yeah, it's fun to run through keywords. I need to start making a list so I don't like repeat any. But yeah, I'll go back and look.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's get into this week's news. We have quite a bit of news and competitive play stuff this week. So, for the card game news this week, starting with our general news, we did have GenCon last weekend. And again, that was Thursday, August 3rd through Sunday, August 6th. One big takeaway for card games was definitely that Disney Lorcana was huge. It was incredibly popular. Masses of people lined up, or even, I don't even think there was lines anymore. It just was a huge mass sea of people really waiting to get into the area to play Disney Lorcana, trying to get in to get product. And I think that just also shows not only that the chatter and stuff online about the game, but also in person just really showed how popular at least to start, Disney Lorcana is going to be, and very curious to see how that continues once the game officially launches. It will be launching here, I believe, August 18th to like local game stores that have signed up to start with Disney Lorcana. And then September 1st, it will be available to kind of the mass retailers, you know, Walmart's, Targets, that kind of thing. So more people will be able to start getting their hands on it. And I know that there's even been posts from Ravensburger putting out, you know, comments and details and basically making posts that they are aware of the high demand and they will be doing a lot to make sure that there is plenty of product for everybody who wants to play and get cards. So, going to be very, very interesting to watch that unfold over the next month or so. And not only that, but then there was kind of a little bit of a downside. I guess there was right before Gen Con, an entire pallet of cards. And it looks like there has been some news that kind of came out afterwards that it was an entire pallet potentially of Magic the Gathering, I think, commander cards that was stolen. About $300,000 worth of cards were stolen right before Gen Con or as Gen Con was starting. So yeah,
That's
surprisingly,
insane.
yeah, it is so much. And I know at the beginning when this was first surfacing and it was first being revealed in news, there was a kind of that big point of note that people were saying, hey, this does not have any Lorcana cards in it. But I think as things have unfolded, more information has come out about what it was. It turns out that it was all Magic cards. I think at first there was speculation that it was kind of a palette of like potentially multiple different trading card games. But still, regardless, you know, product getting stolen, especially at a convention like that, where that product was likely going to actually be for the public, that's huge, and that's a lot of product. $300,000 worth of cards is an incredible amount.
Yeah, I did not expect that there would be a card heist, but
Yeah.
I mean, the value is the value. I hope they find the people responsible and bring them to justice soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And the some of the news articles that I was looking at earlier this morning and last night, it did look like they are circulating more and more like photos and a little bit, you know, of things that were captured from like security cameras of the two, you know, people who did steal those. So, you know, definitely, I know police in the area are trying to get information so that they can get the people who did steal those cards and do exactly that, and you know are still looking for info. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think that that is definitely something that was pretty circulated on socials and kind of in the news. So yeah, that it happens. It's unfortunate, and you know, as card game players, we hate to see that kind of stuff, but it certainly does happen. All right. Next, we have Hearthstone, and we had mentioned previously that we had the new expansion drop. This past Tuesday, we did see a small patch that hit for Hearthstone, nerfed two different cards in the game. And, you know, for a patch to come a full week after a set launch and expansion coming out with just a couple of nerfs, I think fantastic. Showcase of just how kind of balanced and how good this Titans expansion has been for Hearthstone. So that was honestly pretty exciting to see that, you know, nothing had to get like emergency nerfed or changed within like the first couple of days of the expansion, and that it was just a couple of cards, like a small little patch a week after the launch.
It did still have a pretty big impact on one archetype. I thought one of the two nerfs was like totally warranted, but the second one, the one they did to Mech Rogue, felt like a little bit overcorrecting too early. I guess maybe they just really didn't want to see Mech Rogue at the Masters Tour because it probably would have been. And now it's gone. It's like totally gone. Like I don't see anybody playing it. I don't know if it's in and of itself an overreaction to the nerf from the player base where they're like, oh, this is bad now when it's not actually bad. Or people tried to test it and they're like, oh, this is bad now, but it's like disappeared.
I have still been seeing it. I still did see it some on my climb to legend and in like the 3K legend range. So people are still playing it, but I'm sure probably at that higher legend that you're at, yeah, people are just not playing it anymore. Yeah, it'll be interesting, I guess, to see over the next like week or two if that rises again. As you said, maybe people are just like, oh, it just got nerfed into the ground, not going to play it, switch up, or,
or innovations to the list that make it like seem more viable again or something.
Yeah.
But probably like the most important card got hit and made more expensive, and that can change a lot, even 1 mana.
Yeah, definitely can. All right. And then next we have Flesh and Blood. We did mention this last week as well, but their next expansion, Bright Lights, has been announced. It is a 251 card set that looks to have a cyberpunk or futuristic, kind of robotic type theme. And there are some important dates with this. The preview season will be starting on September 22nd. Pre-release events will run from September 29th through October 2nd. And then the set will release on October 6th. So still a little ways out, but that is coming. Going back to this past week for Marvel Snap, we did have a new season start called Big in Japan that did launch and start on Tuesday, August 8th. And also on Tuesday, August 8th, they did put out patch notes along with that. It brought changes to 6 different cards, and there were some new features for their card upgrading that definitely can make a difference. They have a button now you can hit to multi-upgrade a card. It kind of just jumps the upgrade levels all in one button. So if you are upgrading a card multiple times, instead of actually having to do it multiple times, you just do it once. And then they also added the ability to upgrade cards with gold. There is a limit each day, but it didn't specify what that limit is. So that's a little interesting there. But I think even having the flexibility to just offer that as an option for some players definitely could be pretty helpful.
That's good. It's kind of interesting. I'm actually out of the loop on I'm out of the loop on Marvel Snap now. That's one of the games that I tried to play on the side and complete dailies for. It's probably been a week since I've played it. I don't know. I just my interest started to wane. But quality of life features like that. That sounds like a big one because it was really annoying to do it the other way. From what I remember as I was playing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'll start playing it some more.
Yeah. All right. Getting into Magic again. Big news. At GenCon, Magic did have their Magic at 30 panel, and did they announce a lot of stuff. They announced a lot of stuff for what is coming, and most notably, they did a lot of looking at sets and expansions and things that are coming out in 2024, and a little bit of sneak peek for sets and things coming out in 2025 as well. So quite a ways out there, but I wanted to mention some of these that definitely have gotten a lot of interest and chatter. And 2024, they showed kind of the full year. They broke it down into 3 kind of quarters. Quarter 1, bringing Ravnica Remastered to start, then bringing Murders at Karlov Manor. Now, they did also mention that this is kind of in conjunction with Clue, the company Clue, or Cluedo in some countries, to celebrate 75 years of Clue. Wow. That's, incredible. Nice. But this Murders at Karlov Manor is going to kind of be a murder mystery themed expansion. So that's pretty exciting. A lot of people do like those murder mysteries. And they have some kind of interesting things along with that, some additional content that's going to be coming out. So definitely we'll want to check that out in the middle of Q1 if you like murder mystery type things. And then in March, to wrap up Q1, they will be releasing Universes Beyond Fallout. Yeah, that's right. They're working with Fallout. They've already done Lord of the Rings, right? We just had Lord of the Rings. We have Doctor Who coming soon, and then March 2024, we're going to get Universes Beyond Fallout Edition. That is incredible. In Q2, they have 2 sets: Outlaws of Thunder Junction and Modern Horizons 3. Oh, and it just keeps getting better. Q3, they have Assassin's Creed. That's right. There's an Assassin's Creed set. And then the middle of Q3 is going to bring Bloomburrow. And then the final set for Q3, Duskmorn House of Horror. And wait, it gets better from there. If you're looking for additional universes outside of Magic, you definitely will also want to keep your eyes out for 2025, where they will be releasing a Final Fantasy set. Yeah, they are collabing with Final Fantasy in addition to the other games and universes that I just mentioned for 2024 as well. So huge news there from their panel at GenCon.
Yeah, it's intense. That is a lot of things. It's good to see that they've put so much work and thought into like developing what they're going to be doing for a few years out. So a lot of exciting stuff to come from Magic with lots of really significant different IPs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there has been a lot that I've been seeing on socials and things like that. A lot of people also kind of stepping away from the game just because they are pushing so much products and it's getting kind of expensive. And a lot of players are just getting kind of tired of the amount of product and the amount that it seems like that Wizards is charging for some of these things. And it's just kind of becoming too expensive for a lot of players, and they're honestly losing interest. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see over the next, year, 2 years, especially, what the kind of difference of, hey, this game is becoming too costly. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming. And people leaving, and see the comparison to maybe potential new players that the game is bringing in because of some of these IPs. So I'm very curious to kind of see, what the upside and downsides might be for some of these at the same time.
They'll be fine. They have Post Malone. He'll just buy it all.
That's true. Yeah.
And then Magic will become exclusively targeted towards just Post Malone and his buddies, and they'll release sets for him because they'll be so expensive. Nobody else can play. But if you're part of his friend crew, you'll get your 4 to 5 person Magic games.
That's right. All right. So become friends with Post Malone now and get in that circle now while you can. All right. Got it. Perfect.
Easy.
All right. For Pokemon, we have the Scarlet and Violet Obsidian Flames expansion coming August 11th. That is coming so soon. Actually, today soon. Today is the 11th. So that is launching today. And definitely have seen some people already at this last weekend that were playing in like pre-release events and starting to get some of those cards. So that is launching today. You should be able to start finding it like over this weekend at your local retailers if they're going to have it, local game stores. So keep your eye out for that. And, especially kind of in conjunction with this weekend is the World Championship that Ron will talk about more in our competitive and organized play section. But that's pretty exciting. Newest set launching today.
Oh, I got to use that term going forward. Today soon.
Today soon. That's right. Yes.
It's coming soon. How soon? Today soon.
Today soon. That was totally not I didn't remember what today's date is.
No. I love it.
Had to look suddenly. No.
We own this. We own this now.
Today soon. That's right. All right, and we also got some news from the Eternal card game that the next set for Eternal is on its way, called Battle Lines. That will be coming this fall. No specific date released in that news article, but just says this fall. So we'll definitely keep our eye out for that to see when that's actually coming. But they did specify that it will contain over 200 cards and a few new mechanics. So we'll have that linked for you as well. And then for DC Dual Force, of course, the open beta has been running, but they have still been putting out some patch notes and adding new content into the game. And they did make a post that starting this past Tuesday, August 8th, that they'll be delivering weekly patches with a mix of new content, bug fixes, user experience adjustments, card balance improvements, and new features. So definitely, again, if you are interested in new card games that are coming out, if you are a DC fan, or if you just want to check out some cool comic related content, then they will be releasing all of that kind of stuff on a weekly basis now going forward, including some of those solo content, comic book related features. So those are already starting to be added into the game. So go check those out. All right, Ron, what do we have for competitive and organized play?
All right. So for competitive and organized play, we have a whole bunch of significant events that are going down through this month. The Masters Tour, of course, is for Hearthstone in August 19th through the 20th. So just right around the corner next weekend. Is when that's going to start off with our 16 players, as previously discussed in a different episode. That should be really exciting to see. And we finally have an idea of what the meta is going to be for the Masters Tour, given that they had recent card changes. Highly unlikely that they would make any other changes before the MT happens. So we'll be excited to see that and tuning in on Twitch instead of YouTube, which is nice this next week since they've started broadcasting on Twitch again. For Pokemon, we have Worlds that is happening in Japan, August 11th through 13th. That's right. Today, soon, it is happening. And for the VGC portion, our very own Nails from AFG is 5-2 after day one. And he is looking for a solid next day to keep his momentum going, but definitely a pretty solid start. And we're very excited to see how that's going to go down. He had some thrilling updates too in the middle of the night. I didn't get to read them in real time, but I woke up and I saw all the posts. I'm like, "Ooh, he's doing good."
Yeah, that's right. I know. I was like, there were even some points I was like, okay, well, clearly, that round went fast because it was like 30 minutes, or 27 minutes between his posts of one round update to the next round. And now it's been an hour since the last round update. So I'm like, just refresh, refresh, refresh,
Yeah.
refresh, refresh, refresh. Is there an update yet? Like I
Gotta
need to
know.
see
I
how
gotta
he's
know.
doing. And then
Yeah.
finally it was like, okay, I'm completely exhausted. I'm falling asleep. It's just about 2 a.m. for me. And I just
Yeah.
cannot stay up any longer. I have to be up at like 8 a.m. So I should probably go to sleep. So I had to stop updating. And then, yeah, I woke up about 8:30 and saw the final results. And I was very excited.
Yeah. So we're all pulling really hard for him and hoping he can get what he wants out of this Japan trip. Even if it's not a whole bunch of wins, at least some fantastic memories. But yeah, hopefully both. Why not both? So we'll see. Moving on from Pokemon, we have Battle Spirit Saga with grand open events in November that will have a grand total of 25,000 in cash prizes and Pro Tour events invites on the line. For Magic, we have MagicCon Las Vegas. It is going to be hosting the pinnacle premier level play event of the season, the 2022 to 2023 season. The Magic World Championship, as well as their new 100K limited open. For Yu-Gi-Oh, we had the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG World Championship that happened last weekend in Tokyo. And for Legends of Runeterra, last weekend was the Heart of the Huntress Worlds Qualifier, Runeterra Open. And broadcasts were done on August 6th. They had the regional coverage for the 3 different regions. And lastly, Flesh and Blood has upcoming very soon now. I think we've been mentioning this coming up, and it's now only about 2 weeks away. USA Nationals at the Westgate Las Vegas Report, and a calling event will be happening. That is coming up August 25th through the 27th. And that's what I have for competitive and organized for now.
That's still quite a bit, though. That's
a
lot. It's exciting.
Just blazing through.
Yeah. And just wait till, in about a month from now and a little after, when we start actually getting to add like Disney Lorcana updates in there as well.
The wait is almost over for Lorcana. It's wild. Been talking about it for quite some time.
That's right. All right. Well, that was a ton of news, a ton of competitive play. I think, though, let's get into our roundtable topic of the week, Ron. And this is something that I have thought about, and I've talked about it in the past with some of the other content that I've done, but I don't think we've really gotten to discuss something like this, at least not to this degree. And what I kind of wanted to talk about with you is kind of this idea of different circles, of either circles of players or circles of skill level or even focus, right? Like with some players being very competitive focused, or some players just wanting to play fun, chaotic, random decks, like for Hearthstone, as an example, or even with like Magic. Some players are really just focused on Commander. Some players are focused on Modern or Limited, whatever it might be. So I guess the kind of premise that I would like to start with this topic is this kind of idea of these circles, these different levels. And I talked about this, it feels like a while ago now, but I talked about this in regards to, let's say that you are looking to improve your gameplay. You are trying to hit different levels of, ranked. This is especially important for things like online games, Hearthstone, or any of the other kind of digital games that have ranks, that have, those online kind of systems that you need to progress through the system to hit legend or masters or whatever, the highest levels of play are. And there's kind of these different circles, these different tiers, these different levels, and how you improve within each of those kind of stays the same, but at the same time, there are differences. So when you're first learning a game, right, you're kind of in this like new player or just kind of beginner type circle where you don't really know much. You can just kind of play something and see how it goes. And you're probably going to make a whole bunch of mistakes. You're not really going to know the opponent's deck or the cards. You're just kind of going with it, right? You're just like, all right, let me just see what happens. And as you progress through the ranks, you kind of jump to these different levels. And I think one big trap, I know I have definitely put myself into this, is sometimes you start to compare yourself to other players, other people within those different circles. And one big thing that not just the comparison, but kind of when you jump to these different circles, these different levels, is it gets really hard to gauge where you're actually at, right? So let's say you're in that new player circle. When you first start, right, you're kind of at, we'll say, quote unquote, like the bottom of this tier, right? When you very first start, you jump in. But then as you learn more and more, you kind of move your way up to like the top of the tier of beginners. And then maybe you're better than other beginner players. So then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I've gotten so good, right? Like I've learned so much. I'm better than these other people. But then you kind of cross that threshold into that next little tier up. And then all of a sudden you're at the bottom of that next tier. Now, if you compare yourself or start saying, looking at yourself in that tier, well, compared to the players in that tier, you're at the bottom. Right now, you're like, oh wow, I suck. I suck compared to these people. This is terrible. Like I don't know anything. But then again, as you move your way up through kind of that tier, that skill level, that focus level, you might start to be like, oh, okay, like now I feel really good, right? I'm so good at this. I'm awesome. I'm so much better than these people. And then again, you work your way into like the next threshold, that next tier, that next circle of player, or that next level of skill. And then you go all through that again. Oh man. Oh, now compared to these people, I suck. I don't know anything. This is terrible. Right. And there's kind of that shift that happens each time you go in or out of these different like circles of level. Or even if you shift gears. I mean, I mentioned that at the top of this show, right? How I kind of switched gears from kind of a general focus on like trying to do a whole bunch of stuff to like really diving hard into like studying Hearthstone, studying these new decks, studying matchups, studying, all of this stuff. And that also meant that with that, I started watching or trying to get knowledge from different levels of players. And then all of a sudden that meant instead of watching or, kind of communicating with people that might be around my skill level, I started watching people who are rank 5 legend, rank 20 legend. And that is quite a jump. And then all of a sudden I just started thinking, wow, I know nothing. I am terrible, and it's not that I'm actually terrible at the game. But when I started comparing myself to that different kind of circle, that different tier of skill and player, and my focus had shifted. So it was kind of a huge swing of not only the skill level of players that I was kind of comparing myself to or looking at their content and knowledge, but also the shift of the focus of what I was trying to get out of, watching their content or, connecting with them. So it was a huge shift very suddenly. And it did slightly have a negative impact until I started realizing, oh, wait, okay, I can't just like all of a sudden expect myself to be at that level just because I start watching them or seeing what they're doing.
Well, we are often our most harsh critics of ourselves, but
that is very true. Yes.
It is important to remember, like, for instance, you are a legend player, and that already puts you in like the top 1%, I think, of the Hearthstone player base. It's just that, there's like 10,000 something legend players every month typically. And it's like, oh, I want to be higher than I want to be in the top, 5,000 and then 1,000. I want to be in the top 500. I want to be in the top 100. I want to be in the top 10. I want to be number one. It's like every little step of the way. And there's always someone you could compare yourself to who has probably, either been playing the game longer or spends more time on the game, or has a different approach in some way that works for them. A whole lot of different factors that make them, a higher skill level than you currently are. But a lot of times it's just not really fair to yourself to try to make that comparison.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely not fair to yourself. And I do think that a lot of players do this. I mean, even if you take Hearthstone or again, some of these kind of digital games that have these kind of, in-game ranks, going from bronze to silver could even be considered like one circle or one tier level, right? Where, as a bronze player, you start at the bottom of bronze and you're like, okay, I don't really know anything. But then as you, get to the end of bronze, you're like, oh, wow, I'm so much better than these bronze players.
Figured it all out.
Like, yeah.
And then easy.
Then so you get in, yeah, then you get into silver and you're like, oh, okay, now I just like hit a wall and I don't know what's happening or I'm struggling or maybe you even zoom through that. And then you eventually will get to the kind of spot where you do kind of hit a wall or you plateau with your win rate or your growth or whatever it is, that you're kind of focused on. And I've definitely personally experienced this, and I've also heard a lot of people talk about this before as well, across, again, these multiple card games. But it's kind of just that it's almost a shock to your system, I think, sometimes, depending on like how fast or how hard you hit that kind of wall, you hit that plateau. And some players don't really expect it, right? They kind of get into that mindset of, wow, I'm just winning all these games, I'm awesome, it's just, this is going to keep happening for me, right? They kind of, it almost builds up the expectation that they're just going to keep winning, until all of a sudden that stops. And then all of a sudden, maybe they just start losing a whole bunch. And then they're like, what happened? I don't understand. I thought I was so good at this.
And in any card game, especially, variance is a major factor. And if you're not used to it, or you're not thinking about it, or you just have a different like mental approach to the game, and it's not, part of something that you have at the forefront of your mind, you may dismiss a lot of variance that potentially went your way when you're winning, and not realize the variance that's happening that is going against you when you're losing. So it can be a very streaky game, any kind of game, Hearthstone or other card games. Speaking from personal experience with Hearthstone, it can be very streaky. And sometimes you can do literally everything right on every turn, and you can still lose because you have zero agency, given the way that you draw, the way that you drew your cards, and the way that your opponent drew their cards, and sometimes the archetypes and the matchups. So it requires a lot of other understanding to even analyze the reason behind a loss, when you lose. And when you win, you often don't really do that kind of analysis for why your opponent lost or why you won. If your opponent drew like horribly all game and you do great, well, you just won because you're better, right? You're just a more skilled player. And if the reverse happens, well, they were lucky. We never take personal responsibility. I refuse. No, they got lucky again.
That's right. Yes. Well, and it can be challenging, but if players are really looking to improve and they kind of focus on this, I mean, recognizing, for one thing, actually recognizing and saying, hey, I'm in a different circle of player, different tier level, I'm in a different bracket of skill set or knowledge that I need to actually get better. That is a huge first step, just recognizing that as something that you need to focus on. I think a lot of this also can tie into various forms of tilt. If anybody has heard of Jared Tendler or have read some of his books, he's focused more on like trading, like stock, trading and markets and stuff like that right now. But he is very, very well known for his books on the mental game of poker, and has been coaching players and doing that for, 15, 20 plus years now. He's very, very skilled in that. And I think some of these concepts really apply to his concept of kind of the inchworm method of, recognizing play style, and as well as different forms of tilt. I mean, I mentioned, when you kind of are overconfident, that actually can be a detriment, because you can start to, say, oh, well, I know what I'm doing. I've played this deck 1,000 times. And you kind of overcompensate. And as you said, maybe you're not recognizing what your opponent is doing because you're just overconfident. But you can also be definitely on the other end, where all of a sudden, if you feel like you've hit a wall, you can kind of berate yourself or be like, oh, well, I'm just like the worst player ever. I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing, when you don't recognize the skills that you have learned to even get to that point in the first place. And you kind of just throw all that out the window. It's like, oh, I'm just terrible. I don't know anything. So there's kind of a give and take in both directions. And if you think about these players that are kind of in these situations where they're either on one side or the other, what kind of advice would you give them, Ron, to suggest that they kind of start to get themselves out of that rut and try to recognize where they can focus to work on their skill set or their improvement?
Yeah, that's a really good idea to like dive into. So starting with the circles of like player types, whether maybe you're in the beginner level or the intermediate level, maybe you feel like you've hit an advanced level, or you're even beyond that. The first step should definitely start with identifying like where you feel like you fall into place in terms of the overall player base or something like that. And because a lot of these games have competitive ranked systems, it makes it a little bit easier. You have a number or a designation that tells you kind of where you all are already. You do have to apply some bit of other information to that, like, is that a function of time? Like, am I this rank right now because I'm not playing very much and I would be higher if I played more? So you want to look at win rates and some other things. So one of the best things that I could suggest is starting with some kind of tracking software that enables you to look at replays of your games. If you play a game and you look at a replay, you can try to assess what you did right, what you did wrong, what your opponent did right, what they did wrong, and try to see what kinds of things you can work on for yourself. Also, sometimes we can be blind to our own games, so it is huge to have a second set of eyes come in and look at that replay for you and say, well, here's what I saw on your side that you could do better. Here's what I saw from what your opponent did, and so on. Beyond that, there's a lot of different other steps you could go into, watching people who have been playing the game for longer, or maybe you're at higher ranks who are streaming and they can be discussing their plays. Can we think of anybody who does that? just a short little self plug for myself and Don. We both stream on Twitch. Myself, of course, at RonMexico, and dragonrider at dragonrider TCCG. And there are plenty of streamers that like talk through plays and go over what they're doing and why. If you're looking for kind of a more learning based approach, a lot of times it's as simple as just before the streamer makes a play, look at the cards and what play would you make, and then why did they do something different? Maybe your play was better, maybe your play was worse. Try to analyze why. And if nothing else is working, depending on how important it is to you, you can always like line up coaching sessions too. If it's a real priority, I really want to get better at the game and hit a higher competitive level. There are multiple top tier players that you could, pay for coaching sessions with as well. Or just look for if anyone is offering like free coaching or wants to get into that. There's so many different approaches that you can take to try to say, hey, I want to work on my game. How do I do it? Identify yourself, your position, your needs first, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I think in that same vein too, I think recognizing kind of one specific thing, I think at least that you want to start working on is also a huge step. It can be very easy to say, I want to be better. But what does that actually mean, right? Like, how do you actually get from where you are to just being better or getting better, right? That it's too vague to just say you want to get better. So definitely trying to kind of focus in on maybe one aspect of the game, or one or two maybe. Do you want to get better at recognizing what your opponent is doing? Maybe based on their hand, if they don't play the optimal thing, like hand reading type skills, right? That is a skill that can definitely help you in games, whether it's a digital card game or a physical card game. I think physical card games as well. I know Itachi, when he was a host before. Some of our guests have also talked about that, especially at those like high level tournaments. They've talked about like hand reading and kind of reading your opponent, right? They're reading their face, reading their movements, and getting a feel for that. So that is one skill that you could focus on. And again, there's tons of different skills, but I think just focusing on one or two also helps put you in a better position, because instead of just the very vague, broad, I want to get better, right? You need to kind of give yourself a bit more of a focus. And even in terms of like circles or different tiers or focuses, there's various focus, right? Do you want to get better at just ladder systems, at climbing, ranked systems? And depending on the game as well, that could also be very, very different than what approach you might take if you want to be better in tournaments. I'm going to use Hearthstone as an example because I think that is kind of very different than some of the other card games, where Hearthstone, right, for the ladder, for the rank system, you play one deck. And you could play that same deck over and over and over and over if you want. But then when you go to play tournaments, most of the tournaments are going to want you to bring 3 different decks or 4 different decks. And so you have to know how to play those 3 or 4 different decks, and you have to know how to play those multiple different decks against multiple other decks. And so it kind of adds to the level. And I've seen this time and again from players who go from maybe just playing ladder or rank system and think, oh, I've got this. I know how to do this. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm going to try a tournament. And then they go, wow, I lost. I don't know what I'm doing. That was way more, than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
what do you
hold
mean I have
on.
to yeah.
They banned my favorite thing that I've spent 90% of my time playing. And now I'm forced to play only the things that I've spent 10% on. And I need to understand the strategy of like, which do I queue against which and the matchups and all these different things. Yeah. Like it can, if you're not prepared, it can be a very, sobering experience, I guess, to come in full of confidence and be like, okay, I've played this game for a while. I know how to win Hearthstone games. And then you play something that is a different format from what you're used to, and boom.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so not only I think are there kind of circles or tiers of like skills, but as I mentioned, there's kind of this focus like circle. You have different circles of focus, different like tiers of focus. Where are you focusing your attention for your growth or your improvement? And even shifting, I think we've had multiple players and multiple competitors who have joined us for interviews on the show. Even I'm going to say last year we had the Magic World Champion, and he was even talking about how he learned so much more after he kind of got a practice group together, right? And started really practicing for the tournaments, because it was a different style of practice and a different style of growth and different players that he was working with than what he had before. And he improved a ton as a player after getting that practice group together. And he felt that really helped him get to the point of being able to compete well enough to be at the world championship and win and become the world champion. So, and again, we've had multiple players who have said this, where again, it's like, it's a whole different kind of category. And I know even for myself, when I've played or even tried to practice, even when I'm, really like get down to it and I'm studying and I'm doing this stuff, I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm getting the hang of this. I understand. And then all of a sudden I start working with a group, or as you said, maybe have somebody else review my replays or something. And then I kind of just get like slashed to the ground a little bit, like, oh, wow, they notice like all these things that I didn't. And it's kind of that humbling experience, like, oh, wow, okay. Like now I have to retrain my brain yet again to recognize that, my mind, my own experiences can only take me so far. And now these other people are bringing this other perspective, these other ideas, this other line of thinking, this other line of play that I need to
Right.
look at and consider.
It can be, sometimes it's like it might even be changing your entire approach to the game, depending on what circle you started in, and what circle you're trying to get to. You might be looking at things through a more narrow lens, and then you have to widen it, and all of a sudden it changes your play style completely, among other things. So it very much is connected to your goals and like what circle you're in. Because, for instance, a player at the very top who's competing in Masters tours obviously has a lot different focus from some other people in the community who are just focused on totally different things. Like, there's someone like Brian Kibler who plays Hearthstone all the time. He's won Magic, like, championships. He's competed at the highest level of a different card game and won. So the competitive chops are there, but it's not his priority. His focus, I think, in his words, is like sweet decks. Like, he just wants to make things that are cool,
Yes.
you know. And then there's players like Zeddy, or content creators like Zeddy, who are focused on being like a completist, and he's got like every card and every hero skin and completed every achievement that Hearthstone has. That's his focus. So he's not going to be like up at the top competing at the highest level, because he's preoccupied with other things. And then you can even see someone like another content creator like Mark McKazy, who has a very, very low overall win rate. I think HS Replay came out with a thing where you can publish your win rates, because that's not his focus at all. His focus is creating like really interesting, weird combo type things, or just unusual ways to do ridiculous amounts of damage or other things in a game, and have highlight clips from it. You wouldn't call him a bad player, though, even if his win rate's like 25% for ladder, because if he was playing seriously, or playing like the higher tier decks, he would probably win a lot more, but it's not the focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just kind of interesting to think and look at these kind of different circles, these different tiers, these different aspects and avenues that players take. So it definitely is something that I think players can kind of get themselves in this mindset and kind of get themselves stuck sometimes. So I just wanted to kind of talk about this as like an all-encompassing kind of topic, and look at these different layers that kind of go into it. And I think sometimes players don't think about this stuff, especially some of us who really want to improve. We don't necessarily even think of these different avenues, these different like circles, these different things that we're looking at as something that is part of our improvement. We can kind of be like, I just want to get better. And we
Yeah.
don't, look at what that really means and what that entails.
Yeah, it's a constant journey. You'll never really hit the point where all of a sudden you've done it. You've achieved it. There is nothing else to improve. Like, that is not a point that any card game player, or probably any competitive scene of anything, that someone will ever achieve. So it's just a consistent strive to improve, try to be the best that you can be, depending on what your focus is.
Absolutely. I think for kind of my wrap up statement here for this topic, I'm just going to say, if you are a player who you feel like you want to focus on a certain thing or you want to improve, I would definitely recommend start by focusing on what your focus is, right? Like, think about, what is it that I actually want to improve, and be a little bit more specific with it, rather than just saying, I want to get better or I want to be a better player. Because learning how to focus on a specific aspect, learning how to focus on a specific deck or a specific archetype, or really honing your skills that way is going to take you a lot farther in the long term than just a general statement.
Yeah, and measurable goals go a long way towards like helping you reach the type of goal that you want to get to. So maybe it's a particular win rate you want to get with a certain deck. Maybe it's a particular rank on ladder. If you've never hit legend, I want to hit legend. If you've hit legend before but you haven't gone to like a particular rank, you could set one of those marks as a goal, and then you can measure yourself against it. That definitely helps a lot on your improvement journey, as you're like having some specific thing to work towards and celebrate when you reach.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very important as well. Celebrating the improvement and the milestones that you hit along the way as well. Absolutely. Um,
I knew I should have had a party when I hit legend for the first time.
yes, that's right. It's an exciting moment,
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on this topic, Ron, before we close it out?
I think it's a good stopping point. We could probably honestly talk about this particular topic for, I don't know, 3 to 5 additional shows. Because I don't know, there's like a lot that you can go into and different branching ways. But that's just like the tip of the iceberg, and I think we covered a good bit for, introduction, how to get yourself to a point that you want to reach.
Absolutely. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Thank you for checking it out. And I think that is going to put us into our wrap up here, Ron. So just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you. If you would like to be on the show, as we mentioned, we do have guests. Or maybe you know somebody that you think should be on, absolutely let us know. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at TCCG Roundtable. We do also have a Discord that you can jump into, and also our top pinned tweet will have a link for that Discord as well if you want to join us in there. If you are listening to the audio version and you would like to check out the video version, you can find that over on my personal YouTube. That is youtube.com dragonrider TCCG. Of course, as I just mentioned, we do have those audio versions that you can check out and listen to as well. You can find that pretty much anywhere that they put out audio podcasts. And if you are interested as well in getting some like gaming gear, some card game stuff like dice or play mats, anything like that, we definitely would greatly appreciate if you check out Inked Gaming, as we are affiliated with them. You can use our link, and any purchases that you make directly support us as well. So we greatly appreciate that support there. And again, thank you to everybody for checking this out. If you want to find us individually, Ron, where can people go to find you?
So I am on Twitter at Ron_HS. You can find me on YouTube, RonMexico HS, and you can find me streaming every weekday, Monday through Friday, on Twitch at 7 p.m. Eastern at RonMexico HS. Where can they find you, Dragon Rider?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, DonnieDK. It's DAWNIEDK. You can find me on YouTube, as I mentioned, and Twitch, dragonrider TCCG. Or if you just kind of want to find a whole bunch of stuff that I do, you can check out my website, dragonridertccg.com. And again, thank you everyone for tuning in for this week's episode, and we will see you at the roundtable.